Good evening, ladies. I would say ladies and gentlemen, but I guess it's just ladies. I must ask you for mehila. It's not my way really to keep sibur waiting. My rabbi was very makpid on Torah sibur. This was one of his pet peeves, and tonight I have committed the cardinal sin of transgressing Torah sibur hundreds of times over, as I see. I just came from a wedding, and these things are really out of the rabbi's control. The time that a wedding goes off is, in Arabic, we say nasib. Nasib means you say basher, there's a time that it has to go off, and no matter who the rabbi is, no matter what time you tell him, when God's ready for the wedding, you have to be married for a certain amount of years and months and days and seconds also. So all that's calculated, so it was out of my control. But I appreciate your indulgence, and it looks like most of you stayed. Maybe we lost a couple of people in the front row. I also would have liked to hear the Rabbi. I understand she spoke before me. I'm sure somebody taped it of some sort. You really don't need me to say anything after I'm sure the Rebbe spoke with great inspiration, as she usually does. So consider this just as a postscript. I know most of you ladies don't study Gemara, Talmud, at least on a daily basis. But this piece of Gemara we can study together tonight, and I think it'll shed light on Be'ezat Hashem, the holiday that's coming up, the holiday of Shavuot. The Gemara finds itself in Yevamot, which is the more difficult Gemariyot, and it's on Daf Ayin Vav, Amud Sheni. The Gemara's backdrop is a very famous story in Tanakh. All of you are familiar with this story. The story comes from our prophets. When I was young in the yeshiva, I had claims against my rabbis in high school, because in elementary we learned all the Nevi'im. We studied a lot of prophets. And when it came to high school, they didn't teach us any Nevi'im. So I went to the Rosh Yeshiva and I said, why are you depriving us? Why don't we study any Navi? So he said, we're a non-profit organization. And that was the end of the conversation. But there's a famous story in Tanakh where David HaMelech, before he was the king, he was a Na'ar. He was really unknown. His original claim to fame was when Shaul, the king at the time, the first king of Israel, needed a warrior to go and make battle against Goliath. Goliath might be considered the first official terrorist of the Palestinians. He was a Pilishti. His descendants, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are fulfilling his minhag. They have continued the tradition of Goliath. And Shaul needed somebody to contend against him. And David, who again was not known as a warrior or a man of might, volunteered. Shaul was a little shocked. So he said, fine. And he took his armor and he dressed David in the armor. Now you have to know something. Shaul was a very broad man, very tall, Meshichmo v'ma'ala, gavoa mikol ha'am. He was tall. The Gemara talks about how he had a wonderful, handsome look. And this armament really fit him. They were suited for the king. So when he dressed David wasn't as big and wasn't of the same frame, and the clothes fit. This shocked Shaul, because there was a certain tradition that if the clothes of the king fit, that means that the person wearing them might himself be fit for a king. That means somehow they got smaller, they became fitted, and it was like they were custom made. So Shaul became concerned. So the Gemara says, Shaul asked, who is this lad? Who is this fellow? So the Gemara says, what do you mean, who is this fellow? He doesn't know who he is? David, maybe he wasn't known, but his father certainly was known. David ben Yishai. Yishai was one of the tzaddikim of the generation. A man that was free of sin. A man that the Gemara says used to have an entourage that used to escort him wherever he went. So Shaul saying, who's this boy's father? So the Gemara says, who's his father? Who doesn't know the father of David, Yishai? So the Gemara says, and I'm paraphrasing to make it easier, he wasn't asking who his father was, he was asking a deeper question. When did the Davidic dynasty begin, ladies? It began many years before David. It began with the Shevet Yehuda. Yehuda was married to Tamar. Tamar had twins. One of the most important sets of twins that were ever born in our history. Peretz and Zerach. And the tradition goes as follows. If you come from the line of Peretz, so that's where the kings come from. Peretz's lineage produces Malchut. Zerach, on the other hand, produces princes. So David now is asking, where is this son of Yehuda? Which twin does he come from? Is he from Peretz or is he from Zerach? What he really was asking, is this going to be the next king of Israel? So they started a whole tumult to try to find out the pedigree of David. In the interim, came a very great Talmid Chacham into the discussion. A Talmid Chacham of note, a man that was referred to as Doeg Ha'adomi. Doeg, the red one. Maybe it was because he had a reddish complexion, but the Gemara tells us in a different place it is because anytime anybody had a Torah discussion with him, they came out red in the face. His argument was so strong. His logic was so sound. He was Doeg, the one that reddened everybody. Doeg Adomi. So wise was this man, such a scholar. He was able to expound 300 interpretations on Migdal HaPoreach Be'avir. What is Migdal HaPoreach Be'avir? Literally, the tower that's suspended in the sky, which is a very fancy way of saying the letter Lamed. Anybody ever see the letter Lamed? It has a long neck, right? And then it has a roof on top. So it's like a tower that's suspended in the sky. He had 300 interpretations of what's the pshat in the neck of the Lamed. Could you give me one interpretation? Or better yet, give me 300 interpretations on anything. That's how wise he was. That's how brilliant. He was able to be Doresh, even the construction of the Otiyot. Doeg comes along and says, wait, I think you're ahead of yourself, Shaul. Before you discuss his right to the throne, there's a more basic question that you have to ask. Is he Jewish? Is he Jewish? That's the last person you think to question his Jewishness? David? What kind of question is this? And he says, yes, we have to go back to David's grandmother. She was a convert. So we accept converts. Giyoret Tzedek. She wasn't part of the Syrian community, Ruth. She wasn't privy to our edict and all our laws. So she was accepted. What's the matter with Ruth Moabiyah? So Doeg comes along and says, you forgot a pasuk in the Torah. The pasuk says, Lo yavo Amoni uMoavi bekal Hashem. It's a problem. You can't accept converts from Moab. You can accept converts from all the other nations, but Moab is banned. Therefore, Ruth is forbidden. The whole conversion was illegal. So forget about, you're talking, is he from the kings? Is he from the princes? He's not even Jewish. So now the conversation becomes a little interesting. So they come along and they answer him. Who was in the conversation? Avner. Avner was the general of Shaul's army. You see, in the olden days, the generals were Talmidei Chachamim. That was the prerequisite. You couldn't fight in the Jewish military unless you had a semicha, unless you knew the whole Torah Kulah. Then you had the zechut to lead the armed forces into war. You needed to be a celebrated scholar. So Avner now enters the conversation and says, no, Doeg, you forgive me, but there's a derashah here that you're not familiar with. Moavi velo Moaviyah. The men are forbidden, but the ladies are okay. So Ruth's legitimate, and see you later. So Doeg comes along and says, hey, you're not going to intimidate me so fast with that. You're going to start playing games now? Moavi velo Moaviyah. So how about when the Torah comes along and says that we cannot accept a mamzer? Are you going to tell me mamzer velo mamzeret? You're going to start making differences, whether it's a boy or a girl? So this already was a strong question. So he comes along and says, well, listen, I'll give you a reason, I'll give you a logic. There's a difference here. The Torah tells us why they're banned. And here's where we pick up at the Gemara. Ta'amam mefaresh bikra. The reason is written in the pasuk. Al asher lo kiddemu etchem balechem bamayim. When we were traveling through the Midbar, we passed different nations. And Moab was a very cruel nation. They didn't even come out to greet us with bare minimums, like maybe some water, maybe some bread. Now they didn't know that we had the man. They didn't know that we had the well of Miriam. We really didn't need any of their provisions. But from their standpoint, you see men, ladies and children, from your own standpoint, you could have made business. How much water could you sell? How much bread were you able to sell? But they weren't interested, and it was out of cruelty. They wanted to see us dehydrate. They wanted to see us starve. So Avner comes along and says, go with the reason. They didn't come out and greet us with provisions. And really, if you think about it, it's the way of men to come out to greet a foreign nation, and it's not the way of ladies to come out to greet. So you really can't put a restriction on the ladies. So comes the Gemara and says, Doeg, you're right. I agree with you. It might not be proper for ladies to come out and greet a foreign nation, but the ladies are guilty. They could have greeted the ladies. Which means the men could have greeted the men with provisions, and the ladies, I'm not saying they should have greeted the men, that would be a breach in modesty, but the ladies should have greeted the ladies. So they're just as guilty. This was Doeg's claim. And you know what the reaction to Avner and Shaul? The Gemara says very clearly, Ishtik. They were quiet. They had no rebuttal. To the extent, the Gemara says, they were about to put up signs. Ba'u la'achruzeh aleh. They wanted to put up signs in the yeshiva. You can't marry into the family of David. We have a question. There's an inquiry on his yihus. His grandmother now is in question, which is Doeg. He turned upside down the whole world. Here already they're talking, yeah, malchut, not malchut. Already Doeg says he's not Jewish. They try to answer him up. He says, nah. The women of Moab were guilty. They should have came out and greeted the ladies, and they didn't. They're banned. Ruth is forbidden. David's illegal. Game over. Came another rabbi that was there, another warrior, a fellow by the name of Amasa. You learn the Navi, you'll be familiar with all these names. It's not for now to go through who each one was, but they were all great tzaddikim. And he did something very unconventional. You know, the yeshiva, when the students are learning, the argument many times is called Milchamta shel Torah. It's the war of Torah. It's a war. When I studied in the yeshiva in Lakewood, at the time, I was taking speech therapy. As you see, it didn't do too much for me. But at the time, I thought it was still maybe repairable. So the speech therapist that I had, she asked me, "Are you involved in competitive speaking?" I said, "I don't know what competitive speaking means." She says, "Well, where do you learn?" I said, "I learned in the Bet Midrash in Lakewood." So how many people are in the Bet Midrash? I said, "About 1,000. And what are they doing? They're all screaming on top of their lungs. She said, "That might be it." But again, I chose to stay learning in the yeshiva at the sacrifice of maybe my voice. In the yeshiva, it's a milchama. Screaming and yelling and fighting. But what I'm going to tell you now is unprecedented. Amasa got up and he took a sword out. And he lanced it in the middle of the yeshiva. And he says, "Listen over here, Doeg. I'm going to tell you a tradition that I have. I don't know about your halachot. I don't know about your questions. I don't know about your logic. But I'm telling you, I have a tradition from the prophet Shemuel. And if you're going to question me, you can go to his Bet Din. His Bet Din is still around and they'll verify it. And he has a tradition from Shemuel and from his rabbi, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. And the tradition is very clear. When the Torah forbids Moavi converts, it's only the men and it's not the women. Finished. And anybody that wants to challenge me on this, the sword is going to take revenge." Well, everybody said if you put it that way, nobody wants to meet up with the sword. And it seems it was put to rest. You can't really question a tradition from Shemuel HaNavi. Shemuel HaNavi is the second greatest prophet after Moshe Rabbeinu. And anybody that can trace a teaching back to Shemuel, with all the questions and all the problems that we had, it's something to talk about. So it was over. David's kosher. You can marry him. Now let's go back to the question: is he worthy to be a king or not? Okay, it's solved. So the Gemara says, wait, we're not out of the woods yet. Mikol makom kashya. We still have a kashya. What's the kashya? The question that we asked. How come the ladies of Moab didn't come out to greet the ladies of the Jews? Which means, listen, you don't like Doeg, he's a gangster, he's a troublemaker. The Gemara Sanhedrin says, incidentally, Doeg is one of the few people that lost his helek le'olam haba. He has no eternity, Doeg. With all his smarts and all his wisdom, he wasn't so good. He was putrid inside. His neshama was corrupted. He was responsible for a lot of great catastrophe in Klal Yisrael. But the Gemara says, leave the man for a second. But he raised a good point. Just like you're telling me the men are not accepted because they didn't come out and greet the Jewish people with bread and water, the ladies should be just as guilty. How come the ladies of Moab did not greet the Jewish ladies? You know what the Gemara says? That's also a breach in modesty. Because of two Pesukim. Pasuk number 1, Kol Kevuda Bat Melech Penima. I know all of you have heard this Pasuk hundreds of times in your yeshiva education, in the Bet Yaakov. This is a mantra, it's written on all the walls, as you know. And what basically it's saying is, it's not the way of the ladies to go out at all. So you can't say, how come they didn't go out to greet the ladies? Well, they're not supposed to go out, not to greet men, not to greet ladies. It's not proper. And then the Gemara says another source, and I read this inside the Gemara. Gemara's languages. B'ma'arava amri ve'etima Rabbi Yitzchak amar kera v'yomeru elav ayeh sara eshtecha v'yomer hine ba'ohel. The Gemara brings another pasuk to show us modesty. When the angels came to visit Avraham Avinu, they asked, where is Sarah? And he said, she's in the tent. Oh, so from here you see what? That Sarah was in the tent. She had a very modest posture. She wasn't prancing, she wasn't outside. Good, so we've proven it. Therefore, Doeg, you're wrong. The Moabi ladies didn't do anything wrong by staying home. That's where they were supposed to be. Therefore, converts from the Moabi ladies are good. I never understood this story of Avraham Avinu when the Malachim came to visit him. I'll tell you what bothers me with the story. Here you have angels. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, the holiest entities. And they come to Avraham Avinu to visit him. And one came to give him a refuah from the Brit Milah. One came actually to tell Sarah that she's going to conceive. And one actually came to tell Abraham about the imminent destruction of Sodom. I never understood that part. What did the angels have to tell Abraham about Sodom for? To heal him, you have to heal him. That has to be hands-on. To tell Sarah she's going to conceive, you have to have an angel to tell Sarah that. But who cares? Avraham Avinu has to get the current events. Go destroy Sodom. What do you have to check in with Avraham Avinu if you're going to destroy Sodom or not? Why does Avraham have to get that information from a malach? Oh, you should know, we're going to destroy Sodom. Hazak Baruch. Well, what are you telling me that for? Just go do it. So you're going to tell me what? The angels they travel in pairs, like a buddy system of some sort? No. The angels, they're not scared of the dark. Let them go destroy Sodom. But they have to travel in groups. But what perplexes me more in this story is the question. The angel comes to Abraham, Ayeh Sarah Ishtecha, where's your wife? I would be very offended if somebody would come to my house, a big rabbi. Oh, Rabbi Mansour, how are you? Where's your wife? What do you care about my wife? We care about chutzpah, we call the cops. What kind of pervert over here are you? That's the question you ask? You're not in my house for 3 minutes, you ask where my wife is? Is this a question that you ask somebody? What kind of guest are you? Avraham Avinu should have been very concerned by such a question. What kind of person is this? The first guy, the no left, by the name also. Yes, Sarah Ishtecha. Where's Sarah, your wife, first name basis? What's going on over here? And Avraham Avinu is not offended by the least. And he answers very calmly, nonchalantly, Hine ba'ohel. Are you going to tell this guest where she is? After he has the chutzpah to be so brazen, to ask such a personal question. If it was me, she's not home. I don't know where she is. You're going to give her the coordinates? She's in the kitchen. Hine ba'ohen. Abraham's answer is just as perplexing. So with your permission, I'd like to explain something I saw from the Chidushei Havim. The Kotzker Rebbe explains this story in such a clear, lucid way that gives a tremendous brightness on the entire episode. Listen clearly, because it's a little heshbon that you have to follow, but you'll get it. Listen to a story. Who was living in Sodom? Abraham's nephew Lot. Now, whatever you're going to say about Lot, he does have a zechut, because eventually he got saved from Sodom, and he ended up having a son. Lot's son was Moav. He actually called his son Moav. Moav is Me'av. Without getting into too much detail, but Lot had an ancestral relationship, as the Torah tells us, and therefore it's Me'av. It's from the father. This is a side point. If you look in the Igrot Moshe, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, in the introduction to, I think, the 5th Halak, he tells over there of Maaseh. Rabbi Moshe was not famous for telling over Maasiyot, but this story happened, he says, with him, so he knows it firsthand, and he tells over the story that in his place where he was in Europe, there was a certain fellow that came down with a very rare disease. The fellow's tongue swelled up to the extent where eventually he died from this disease. He asked for Moshe to come to the hospital to visit. He told everybody leave, and he told the rabbi the following. He said, I'm going to tell you why this happened to me. He says, a few weeks ago we were reading the parasha, and I saw in parasha it says that they named the son Moav, from my father. And I said, what kind of girls did Lot have? It's not enough that they had an ancestral relationship, but you're publicizing it? You called the son from my father? What kind of pirutzot? What kind of judgment did they have? How could you cover it up? He says, in that night that I said it, came to me in a dream a lady that looked holier than anything that I ever saw, shining, glowing, dressed in white. And she came to me and she said, I'm the daughter of Lot. Such a sinuah, such a pure soul she was. And she tells me in the dream, I understand you spoke about me. You had claims against me. Why did I call my son Moav? So I want you to know, I had kavanah. I had a pure intention. I saw in the future that a religion is going to be founded on a principle of an immaculate conception. And if I wouldn't have publicized that Moav was from my father, they would have said, yeah, there's a precedence. Look, how do you think Lot's children had babies? So I had to publicize and say, no, this was from my father. This was not immaculate conception. I did it l'shem shamayim, so the goyim won't use me as an example to prove their theories of sheker. And as a result, for speaking about the daughters of Lot, my tongue began to swell up. So Rabbi Moshe said, look how careful you have to be when you talk about the personalities of the Tanakh. We would never think that the daughters of Lot, anything, there was kavanah behind it. Good. So Lot has Moav. Moav has Ruth. But wait. Lot only gets saved, not for himself. He didn't deserve to be saved. He only got saved because of his granddaughter, Ruth. But wait. If Ruth is not permissible to come into the Kahal, if Ruth is illegal, so then you don't save Lot. The only way you save Lot is if Ruth is kasher to convert, but if she's not kasher to convert, so therefore Lot doesn't have a reason to be saved. And what does it depend? If Ruth is legal, well, if the ladies of Moab didn't have to go out to greet the Jewish ladies. And what is that dependent on? That's dependent on the rules of modesty. So the angel comes and asks Avraham Avinu, not a social question, a halachic question that he posed to the Gadol Hador. Ayeh Sarah ishtecha. You know what he was asking? Not where's Sarah. That's not a question you ask. What he was really saying, I'm on my way to Sidon. I need to know a question first, and only you, Avraham the Gadol Hador, can make such a psak. What's the way of the ladies? Is it the way of the ladies to be independent, to be modest? Avraham understood the question. What he really was asking, is Ruth that's going to come out of Lot kosher? And as a result, should I go save Lot? This was a heavy question. Should I save Lot? Is Ruth kosher? Is David kosher? Avraham Avinu understood the immensity of the question. He's giving a psak now on Mashiach, Avraham Avinu. This is maybe the most important question. Avraham Avinu thinks for a minute and says, yes, Hineh ba'ohen. The way of the lady is to be inside. Therefore, Ruth is kosher because those Moabite women in the future are not going to be obligated to go greet the Jewish people. Therefore, the conversions are legitimate. Ruth is kosher. Go save Lot. That's the depth behind that question. Unbelievable. You learn such a story how many years? And obviously you see such an eye-opening explanation. He never owed him. Thank you, Allah. He went to save Lot. As a matter of fact, many years later, when David HaMelech wrote his Tehillim, David HaMelech wrote a pasuk that you're well familiar with. He said, Kos Yeshuot Esa Ubshem Adonai Ekra. I lift the cross. When was this pasuk said? So the Gemara says, actually this pasuk is said for a future event. When Mashiach is going to arrive, there's going to be a big kiddush. And all the tzaddikim are going to be there. And there's going to be a big argument, who should make the kiddush? So they're going to give it to Avraham Avinu. Bechavod, Avraham, founder. And Abraham's going to say, I'm not worthy, although whatever I did, but I had Yishmael, the father of the Arabs. There's a flaw. Pass. Okay, Yitzhak, please. Yitzhak Avinu, Bechavod Kiddush. Yitzhak says, thank you very much, but although I had Yaakov Avinu, which is a shining light, but I also had Esav. Esav is the father of all the nations of the West, Germany, etc. It's not proper. Yaakov Avinu, you can give an excuse. All your Shevatim were pure, Kulam Kedoshim, Kulam Teorim. I married two sisters. Halachically, before the Torah, but really it's a little pickup. Not for me. And they go down the line. And all of a sudden, they come to David, and David HaMelech says, Ani avarech, veli na'el levarech. I'm going to make the blessing, and I'm deserving to make the blessing. And David HaMelech predicted it when he said, Kos Yeshuot Esa, I am going to be the one that lifts the cup. And the explanation is, why is he deserving? Because David was from converts, his grandmother. And the law is, who makes the kiddush? The Gemara says, Oreyach mevarech, the guest makes the berachas. He says, I'm a guest. All you people, you're all purebreds. I came from somewhere else, so I'm the Oreyach, so it's befitting. So he says, Kos Yeshuot Esa, I will raise the cup. You know what? How the rabbis tell us what he meant when he said, I'll raise the cup. Esa. Esa is a Rashi Tevot. Esa. Aye Sarah Ishtecha. David HaMelech was coming along to say, you know what my legality is? You know where my status of being kasher comes from? From Sarah Imenu. Kosh Yeshuot Esa, because of Sarah Imenu, because she was modest. Because of a derech of tzniut. That's why today I'm legal. Or because how the first matriarch of Klal said the way she conducted herself. That makes David HaMelech kasher, and he knew it. Hineh ba'ohel. And I'm going to tell you another secret. If you look in Megillat Ruth, every pasuk in Megillat Ruth starts with the letter Vav. Vayhi bimei shefot hashofetim, vayhi ra'abaris, vayelech ish bebetlehem Reb Yehuda, batakum vechaloteh. Every pasuk Vav, 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 except for 8. Take the Rashi Tevot of those 8 pesukim that don't start with the letter Vav, and there's 8 letters, and those 8 letters spell 2 words. Mind you, Megillat Ruth is a story how Ruth married Boaz, they had children, and eventually the birth of David. And we're discussing the legality of them. And the 8 letters spell the 2 words, Yish'i ba'ohel. My salvation comes from the tent. Who wrote Megillat Ruth? Shemuel HaNavi. Shemuel HaNavi put an encrypted message that you should know David is kasher. And you know where our salvation comes from? Our salvation comes from the tent. Whose tent? The tent of Sarah Imenu. Dear ladies, what does this tell us about where tzniut and modesty, where that stands, which level, which degree of importance does modesty represent in our nation? Our entire Geulah, its underpinnings, its foundations, its yesod, not from Abraham Avinu, from the tent of Sarah. She brought all the legality of Ruth. Not because of genes, not because of chromosomes, because of a behavior. If we're going to be redeemed, it's in the zechut of the tzniut. Yish'i, our salvation comes from where? Yish'i ba'ohel. It comes from the ohel. And nothing changes. In our generation as well, this has become one of the most difficult challenges of the modern generation. To be honest with you, it's not really for a man to speak to ladies on details of tzniut. Even on the discussion of tzniut, it has to be b'tzniut, obviously. This is something that ladies are supposed to talk to ladies about. I'm not going to talk in detail, it's not my place. But I just know one thing. I cannot appreciate your challenge. When I walk into a store to buy a suit, my question is 3 buttons, 4 buttons, closed bag, vents, but I haven't yet seen a suit that's not modest. They're all modest. It's not a question. You just have to figure out your size. You want a stripe, you want a color. For a man it's very simple, it's very easy. Maybe our biggest challenge in our dress is in the summer wearing wool tzitzit, which is a challenge, there's no question. The wool tzitzit, which is a mitzvah from the Torah, it gets hot, especially when it's humid out. So this is where we grapple in the morning. Should we wear a cotton pair of tzitzit or a wool pair? But The modesty issue, never a man can appreciate such a thing. And then we see the trouble that the righteous Nashim Tzedkaniyot go through, where how many different piecemeal do you have to buy to make it work? I mean, it's never just one fabric. It has to be extended and added, and a surgery and an extension over here and all sorts. But you have to know, that's where our salvation comes. Our salvation is a matter of inches. All that details that we talk about, you can imagine the value that has. And forgive me if I'm being out of line. You see, I could go back to my community tonight and I won't see most of you again. I don't have a job that I'm going to lose as a result of this. But you have to know, your test is so great because we don't have too many role models for this. The society has become so pervasive and so degenerate and so loose. And therefore, even the good people, even the people that are considered modest, can become watered down. It's almost like you have to be like a salmon that's swimming against the current. I had the zechut to be in Alaska this summer. And my wife and I happened to be on a private tour that they took us to see these salmon fish. And it's a wonder of creation. Where you see all the fish swimming in one direction, and these salmon over here, they're going against society. And not only that, but they're swimming upstream. It's like they're climbing a mountain. And you see the effort that they have to put in, and like, I don't know what the fish are saying, but when they see these fish swimming in the wrong direction, the other fish, what are they saying? What are you doing? This is a one-way street. You're going the wrong way. You're climbing a mountain. Why don't you go with us? Easy this way. It's easy. Go with the flow. And they fight, and they fight, and they go. And if you think about it, we traveled 7,000 miles not to see the fish that were swimming in the right direction. That's no novelty. You go, just look at the fish that's going against the stream. This is already a hadush. This is worth to go to the other side of the country to take note of that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes note of any Jew that is able to go against the stream, against the current. And again, it's easy for me to talk. This is not my test. My test is to wake up tomorrow morning to study the Gemara. My test might be in other areas. But the Hazon Ish said, what Talmud Torah is to the men, that's what Tzniut is to the ladies. Your Talmud Torah is Tzniut. That's your, with the thumbs and all the diyukim and all the, it's in the, and yes, it has been said, and I tend to agree with this, Tzniut is one of those items, and again, forgive me for maybe going beyond what I'm allowed to say, but it's almost as if either you are or you aren't. A lot of areas you can get away with 50%, 60%. We have a halachic ruling, rubo kekulo. But in modesty, it's either you are modest or you're not modest. I didn't come here to give musar. But if you're going to be modest, you should be modest. It's either black or it's white. Which means there's little room for gray areas in this subject. Which means a girl will come, but on 90%, it's credible. 90%. Meaning last year you were 60%, so you're better, now you're 90. But again, 90% tzniut. And maybe somebody will argue with me and say that I'm wrong and prove me wrong, and I'll be the first one to say that I retract. But it's one of those items, the way I understand it, from the halakha, from the books. You aren't. That's the meticulous, that's the pratim that you have to be so careful on. That's what separates the girls from the ladies. That's what separates the big boys from the little boys, like we say, to the boys, to the men. Which means, it's that extra care. What do you think Sarah Imenu? If Sarah would have been 80%, so there's no Mashiach. Ruth would have been not accepted. David would have been illegal. And we're not waiting for anything then. There's not waiting for Mashiach, not waiting for anything. It's over. Yish'i ba'ohem. The salmon, you always have to think of the salmon. And at the end of the day, the Geulah is very near. I'm not making a prediction of any sort. I think we'll be able to finish the shi'ur without not having to worry. But you don't have to be a Kabbalist of any sort to know that we're at the end of the road. And because we're so close to Geulah, the Satan is going to create a great resistance in the areas that will bring the Geulah. Hence, the greatest resistance that we're seeing today is in Tzniut. Because that's always in the areas that are able to bring Geulah, that's where you're going to see the Satan put up the most obstacles and the most obstructions. So, if it's difficult, that's your biggest proof that you know that that's the item. That's the litmus test, which is if you want to know the acid test in life is in general, of things that are important, wherever your greatest resistance is and most difficult challenge, that's the item that's important. The Hafetz Chaim would say, all the colleges, they have surpluses. Harvard, the Avdil, doesn't know what to do with all their money. They have millions and millions of dollars in endowments and in funds and investments. But do you know a yeshiva in the world that does not have a deficit? Said the Hafez, that's the biggest proof that Harvard is aligned with the other side, the Sitra Hara, and the yeshivas are aligned with the Yetzer Tov, hence it's not going to go easy. And that should be the biggest motivation that it's emet, that it's genuine. The things that come difficult to us. And this is obvious, one of our greatest challenges. And any time we get together, like you're lucky ladies, especially the ladies from this community. I don't know exactly where I am, I never come to this section that often. I have a driver actually waiting outside for me. But wherever I am, you are lucky because you have very good rabbis, specifically Rabbi Rokeach. I know that I was in contact with him many times over the past few weeks trying to organize this event. He's a darling of a man that he's able to, him and all the other rabbis, it's not one rabbi, it's a whole group, I understand. Of course, the Gemara, the Atra, as Rabbi is here, thank you for the Gemara. It is to your credit that you have leaders that make events like this. And who are we talking to? We're talking to the choir. Who are we talking to? Baruch Hashem, just looking around, everything is modest here. This is a breath of fresh air. But Divrei Torah Sricha Chizuk. You always need encouragement. Even the greatest rabbis would need to hear Musar. The Gaon Mevilna used to hire Rabbi Yaakov Meduvna, the Magid Meduvna, to come to his house every day and give him Musar. The Gaon Mevilna also needed a pep talk, so we're not any worse. Please, may the Almighty bless all of you, that you should have the strength and the courage, and you should have that fortitude to fight the trends, to go against the stream. Ayesara ishtecha, koshishuot esa. Dear ladies, Yish'i ba'ohel, our salvation is in the tent, and when Mashiach will come in our time, Mashiach ben David, and David will lift that cup, and we'll be there to celebrate it. He's going to say, my arrival was the result of the Jewish woman and her modest behavior, her modest code, and her modest way. Ashrechem ve'ashrei chelkechem. Our nation is indebted to you, because, as the Gemara said, B'zchut Nashim Tzedkaniyot Nig'alu. And if it happened once in the Zechut of Nashim, that is the template. And it is going to happen again in our time. Amen.